Lots of them are sweet and cuddly, just love to be petted. And others, well, they would be if only they could. If you're petting and your cat takes a swing at you or tries to take a nip, well, is it right to punish the little devil for his bad behavior? Are you going to get anywhere by yelling or swatting or spraying with water? Well, the answer is no. Your cat's not taking a swing at you because she hates your guts. Has this ever happened to anybody? Does anybody out there have a cat who's tried to take a poke at them when all you're trying to do is be nice and share your love and your affection? Put it in the comment line and tell me how it went. I'd be delighted to answer these questions during this Facebook Live. In fact, if you have any questions about pets, you're welcome to interrupt me anytime. I'm here to try to make a difference. And by the way, in case we haven't met, I'm veterinarian Dr. Jeff Nickel, and this is our family border collie, Miss America, and this is not about dogs, but she's here because, well, she's always here. And this is Tony right here, and this is Gaston, the white fuzzy guy. And they're, excuse me, gentlemen, we're not going to compete for food toys. They have these little things called indoor hunting feeders that we put dry food in because we typically feed them canned food and they think dry is just wonderful. So, and by the way, if you can hear me loud and clear, please hit the wow button. And if you find this information helpful, please send me some hearts just so that I know I'm doing something valuable. Any other comments, you're by all means welcome to put them in the comment line. So let me tell you a little story. This came from this excellent lady. Her name is Linda Hollander. And Linda's job is to connect speakers, people like me, with groups that want to have us share our information with them. And largely when I speak, I talk about pet behavior, of course, because I'm a credentialed specialist in that. But I connect that with empathy and kindness, because that's really the essence of bringing out the best in our pets and each other. And as much as there are a lot of behavioral differences between other species and humans, well, there's a lot of parallels too, and there's so much that we can learn from them. So let me tell you a story, and this is a story that from Linda Hollander here, and this regards her cat, Ramona. And here's Ramona. Can you see her? She's 4 years old, and she's a beauty, isn't she? And she's just a sweet little pet of Linda and her husband. And but that was Tony T. Sorry. Sorry, I surprised you. So anyway, here's the issue with little Ramona here. She's 4 years old, and she's a sweet girl who sometimes nips Linda or her husband when they're petting her. So why would such a sweet kitty like this, or one of my cats, ever take a swing at you? Well, in this cat's case, it happened when they were petting. So first thing we always do with behavior cases, or things that we suspect are behavior, is we rule out all other physical systems before we get to this organ up here. And that's what veterinary behaviorists do first, everything we see. So I asked Linda some important questions because she and Ramona and her husband are in LA, and I practice in New Mexico. So I wasn't going to get my hands on Ramona, but I could certainly gather some information by phone. So my first question is, has Ramona have a history of, you're a silly girl, has she got a history of scratching and rolling and rubbing excessively? And Cindy, hey, thank you for tuning in. Always great to have you. So Linda said, no, Ramona doesn't scratch a lot. I said, all right. I asked Linda, are you familiar with horses? And she said, well, not really. I said, well, if you've ever watched horses, you'll see that in the summertime when there are a lot of flies, sometimes their skin will ripple. Have you ever seen Ramona do that? And Linda thought, and she says, you know what, I have seen that with horses. Well, let me tell you that cats will do that too sometimes. And I said, has that ever happened? And she said, nope, never been a problem. And who just tuned in? Oh, Elizabeth. Oh, from Mexico. Thank you so much for showing up again. I really appreciate people like you doing this with me. And if there are questions, by all means, put them in there. So Linda said, no, Ramona doesn't have skin rippling. I said, all right. Does she, sometimes you'll be sitting there just minding her own business somewhere in the house, and suddenly just turn around real quick and lick on a spot on her, Or does she suddenly just take off like she was shot out of a cannon all of a sudden? Nope, never done that. And I said, well, when you're petting Ramona, is it a problem when you are petting her from front to back and your hand gets posterior or behind the shoulders? Is that when it happens? And she said, yeah, as a matter of fact, that's exactly when it happens. I said, well, here's the problem with Ramona. Sounds like her skin is fine. She has no history of injuries, so I doubt that she has painful joints, for example, which can do it. I said, what you're doing is you're inadvertently annoying your cat. When the cats have been studied, oh, Sid, hello. Thank you so much for showing up again. So here's what happens. When we have studied this good, robust scientific research centered on observations of cats and their colonies, whether it's groups of cats who live domestically in somebody's house or they're feral cats who live in a free living colony, there's interaction between them, especially if it's a well-organized group, and there's mutual grooming. Of course, they groom themselves as well, but this is a sign of affection between cats who are considered affiliate cats, okay? And so when they groom each other, these preferred affiliates, they rub and groom and lick each other's head and neck and a little bit on the shoulders, and that's pretty much the end of it. And so they're very comfortable with that. And there are cats who don't mind getting petted all the way back, but if you really want to give your cat what your cat really needs, especially if you only have one cat, and the only way they're going to get mutual grooming is from their person, then you confine it to their head and neck. I like to rub my cats between their ears or right behind their head, and they just snuggle right up, and they love that. And so I said, go ahead and do that, Linda, and see how that works. And if she reported that it didn't, then I would be suspicious that just petting of Ramona's head, and she was still reactive, that there was some pain there. Ear pain can do it. Skin disorders can do it. We'll get to that in a minute. Dental pain can do it. And you know, the thing with cats is that they are a predatory species. In other words, in the wild, they subsist on eating little creatures like mice and other rodents. But they're also a prey species, meaning that they're not that big, and in the wild, they can be lunch for somebody much bigger. So they're looking around their environment, making sure that they're safe, pretty much like any other prey species, whether it's a rabbit or a rodent, whatever. Well, so cats, they don't show their weaknesses. If they have pain or some kind of a disability, they typically do not make a fuss about it. We humans tend to complain to our friends and family. Dogs, in fact, cry out to their comrades for help. Cats do not. And that's a really important thing for a cat parent to understand, to be watching to make sure that they're active and that they're eating well and that they're behaving the way they normally do, because they tend to get small and hide out when they're sick. And you think, well, my cat loves me. Why wouldn't my cat say something? Thank you for the hearts. I'm glad this is helpful. Why wouldn't my cat say something to me when she's clearly not feeling well? It's just not their nature. And again, cats are different. They're different among themselves, and they're significantly different from our species, even though there's some great lessons we can take from them. So never assume. So if you're petting your cat very gently about its head and neck and you still get nailed, then that cat needs to see its doctor and get evaluated for causes of discomfort around its head. So Linda reported to me, she sent me an email several days later, and she said, "Hi, Dr. Jeff. My husband and I took your advice, and it worked. We haven't been nipped or scratched by our beautiful girl. Thanks again for the advice. Now Ramona is the sweetest cat in the world." And she's up against some pretty serious competition for that title. She's the light of our lives. Take care, Linda. Well, simple diagnosis, but it was important for me to help rule out other things first, even though I wasn't physically examining her. So this sweet girl does not have any situations that trigger her to react toward her people. Well, you know, it's a great way to build a relationship, not to have antagonism. And again, we people can be doing that with members of another species because, you know, we just don't necessarily know better. So head and neck, okay? All right. So let's talk about a little bit more about the physical issues that can create a reactive behavior from a cat when it's being handled or petted. One of the most common and something that many people are aware of is something called feline hyperesthesia syndrome, or FHS. And this is, in fact, by many general practicing veterinarians, considered every time a cat comes in with reactive skin, whether it's that rippling that I mentioned, and you'll see that sometimes. Some cats, they'll be just sitting there and their skin will ripple, or they'll suddenly turn and nip at their own skin or take off because suddenly something caused them to be really itchy and uncomfortable. Well, those cats need to be evaluated for skin disease. It turns out that 85% of cats who do that have primary skin problems. Very often it's allergic, like airborne stuff, the same kinds of things that we can be allergic to, house dust, molds, all that stuff, pollens. Those things are very common causes of allergic itching in cats. Fleas can be a big problem. Now, we're a little early for flea season in most parts of the country, but in the south and in Mexico, for example, we're going to start seeing fleas. Every year we do. And cats are itching, sure, because they get bitten by the fleas, who are bloodsuckers, by the way, but they develop allergies to the flea saliva. And allergies tend to get worse. These pets tend to get increasingly sensitized to these allergens. And so every year, your cat may get more and more itchy and uncomfortable throughout the summertime. So flea allergies, your veterinarian knows how to look for that. Some cats get mange. Here's a picture. Excuse me, Gaston. Thank you very much. This right here is what's called a sarcoptic mange mite. Not a very attractive creature, is it? Well, these can infect dogs and cats and humans, by the way. And the problem with sarcoptic mange in cats is that these tend to be sometimes very hard to find. Now, a good veterinarian is going to look at this cat with itchy skin and evaluate its skin very carefully on different parts of its body, looking for redness, looking for crusts and scales, indicators of skin disease. And in some cases, we don't find it. And we'll do scrapings, sometimes use a piece of cellophane tape on the skin of the cat and try to pick up little bits of mange mites and eggs from the skin surface, even when we don't see clear evidence. We can look at a cat's skin and say it looks completely normal, and we can find sometimes indicators of a smoldering mange infection. In fact, sometimes we have reason to suspect mange, and we don't find it. But there are treatments now that are spot on. The old-fashioned dips that were horrible and sometimes risky, we don't have to deal with that nonsense anymore. We have spot-ons, comes in a little tube, and you put it right over the cat's shoulders. You just part the hair and drip it right on their shoulders. And a couple of these only have to be given once, and you eliminate the mange mites. And they're totally safe, and one of those unusual things in medicine that is 100% effective. So if we're concerned about a mange problem and we don't find it microscopically, sometimes we'll rule it out by treating for it. So we're going to look for all that stuff. Ringworm is another problem that can cause itching of the skin and can cause us to suspect feline hyperesthesia syndrome, which is always the last rule out. So if we've taken all the possible physical causes off the table, we've examined their joints, make sure they're not painful, we palpate their intestines, listen for gut sounds with a stethoscope, ask about maybe diarrhea or hard stool, sometimes check a fecal sample to make sure we've ruled out intestinal parasites. And if all of that stuff's been ruled out, then we're sometimes willing to say, all right, maybe it's one of the 15% of cases of cats with uncomfortable skin where it's actually behavioral, which is feline hyperesthesia syndrome. Hyperesthesia. Anesthesia means no feeling because you're unconscious with an anesthetic. Hyperesthesia means you're super sensitive. And those, again, are the cats. Sometimes you're petting them and they'll take a swing at you. And if we've ruled out the physical causes that are not behavior related, then we say, all right, this could be anxiety related. And some of those cats are going to need changes in their management so that all the cats in the family have an opportunity to hide out in little hide boxes at different heights of different rooms, tall cat trees so they can get away from each other, opportunities to sit at a window high up on a tall floor-to-ceiling cat tree with a birdhouse or a bird feeder suction cupped to the outside of the window, hunt and pounce games, things that can engage the cat in natural feline behavioral activities, super important for cats who are stressed and anxious. There are supplements that can reduce their anxiety, and for those who are really pretty seriously afflicted, there are medications that make life so much better. We take behavior issues very seriously, but we rule out all the other body parts before we go to the brain. Okay. Anybody ever had a cat like that? Well, if you do, you can put it in right now. We'll talk about it, or you can send it to me on my Facebook page later. Put it in on the comment line. So, what do you do if you've got a cat sitting in your lap? And my cats are walking around looking for dry food right now. But if your cat's sitting in your lap and you're petting and you're trying to stay head, neck, and just forward portions of the shoulders, and you notice there's that tension developing, you know, that stiffened posture, and maybe the tail's starting to flick and the ears might be retracting a little bit, well, that's a cat who's about to be a problem, isn't it? And regardless of why it's happening, don't react, because no point in getting into a confrontation with a pet you love, any more than you should get in confrontations with anybody else in your family, for crying out loud. That doesn't solve problems, and it does not improve relationships with anybody. Thank you very much. So what do? You put an end to the problem. And what many people are inclined to do is take the cat and try to set it on the floor. But you've already got a cat who's starting to react to being handled. So there's only one thing you should do, and that is totally ignore. Immediately take your hands away slowly, because if your cat's getting agitated and you move quickly, then that cat may take a swing at you, and there's no value in that. So take your hands away slowly and just stand up and let that cat fall off your lap onto the floor. I mean, they're cats. You know, there's something in New York City called high-rise syndrome. The Animal Medical Center there treats a lot of emergencies. And these cats, many of them live in high-rise apartments, right, with operational windows. And what they found is that if a cat falls out of a window or off a balcony, lesser than 17 stories, they typically land on their feet and do okay, or with just minor injuries. It's above 17 stories that they reach a velocity where when they hit the ground, really bad things happen. 16 or 17 stories and they can still be okay? Yeah. So if you stand up and let a cat drop off your lap, that's only a couple of feet. So don't worry about your cat getting hurt. That isn't going to happen. Cats land on their feet, okay? But you take your hands away slowly and you ignore and stand up. And then we try to figure out what the heck's going on, okay? So don't antagonize your cat. Don't punish. Many people say, look, you know, they take it personally. Hey, I love this cat, and darn it, I take good care of this cat. But let's remember that they are a different species, and one of the important things about dogs, cats, caged birds, or any other pet is that we keep them. You know, we actually own them, don't we? They're stuck with us. And with most of our cats, they're indoors. They can't leave. They can't get out and engage in normal cat activities like they would as a wild cat. So what choices do they have? Well, they can get a little bit agitated. Let's not make that any worse. Let's make it a point to be good leaders and set them up for success. So if you have a cat who reacts, what I'd like you to do is give them what they need to have a peaceful life, just like anybody else in your life. If you're in the workplace, you have friends, you answer to a boss, these people, maybe they're not having a good day. You encounter somebody in a store or on the phone who's not treating you particularly well. Well, it's actually about them, isn't it? And when your cat reacts to you, it is not about you. It's about the cat. And I like to lure my cats to me rather than go to them, because I know they're coming to me by their choice. And if they start to get agitated when I'm petting them, I'm going to set them up to succeed and not set them up to fail and react. I'm just going to stand up and let them drop off my lap. Move on. Not important. They'll come back another time. Has that been helpful to people? I sure hope so. And if anybody has another question, this is a great time to ask, but you can send it to me on Facebook anytime you want. And by the way, I make these Facebook Lives available to the subscribers to my website. I have a website that's got a ton of information I've been loading in there for years, and it's searchable. You can find information on dogs and cats, and not just behavioral stuff. 50% of what's in there is other physical issues, and so you can search it and find answers to just about everything. And if you subscribe to my website, there's a way to do it at the bottom of the homepage, which of course is no charge, then every Tuesday morning you'll get my Facebook Live from the week before, and my media blog, which is actually my newspaper column that I put in the Albuquerque Journal. And so you get that automatically. And when you do subscribe, I will send you, just as a gift, my at-home, and it's free, pet first aid and CPR guide, which is a great thing to print out and stick to your fridge so you're not hunting around for it in case something happens. It's got a lot of great information, including phone number for pet poison hotline, pet poison control. Pretty valuable. So thanks for being here with me. I appreciate it. So does Miss America and Tony and Gaston's. He's camped out on the floor, sitting there like a chicken brooding a hatch of eggs. I don't think they really do that, but that's what they look like. So thanks again for being here. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. I'll be back next Thursday.